Welcome back to the Master Your Money podcast with me, Marini Jackson, your guide to mastering credit, building wealth, and creating financial freedom. Let's dive in to today's episode. Today, we are going to be talking more about budgeting. I shared in a previous podcast about the number one mistake people are making with money. If you haven't seen that, I highly encourage you to check it out. But with budgeting, it doesn't have to be stressful. A lot of people, they think budgeting is super hard. I know for me, it was, as I called myself in that podcast episode I was talking about, an Armageddon budgeter, where it was kind of an all or nothing. Like, I didn't include savings in my budget. I gave my tithes. I made sure that, the bills that I had, paying back student loans, that was something that was huge and heavy for me. And my goal at that time was to pay off my student loans. And I knew for like my largest student loan repayment amount, it would take some time to pay that off. But the small ones, I was very aggressive with making sure I paid those off. But outside of paying bills, like my student loans and making sure my car, had gas and was maintained, there wasn't actually a lot of wiggle room in my budget. I occasionally would treat myself out to eat. I would buy, like, if I needed some clothes, things like that. I would, of course, do that. But I eventually got away from budgeting because I felt at that time it was so restrictive. I was being restrictive because I was laser focused on my goal of paying off student loans, which I did. I paid off, I don't recall how many, but I know more than two student loans I was able to pay off pretty quickly because of that. But again, I did not prioritize savings, and if I can do everything over, I would highly recommend including savings in your budget, because when I purchased my home, I didn't have a ton of savings in place to put a 20% down payment, which some people recommend doing. So that's one thing I would definitely suggest. Also, people don't budget because you know they they think it's like restriction when you hear the word diet. Like if your doctor says you need to lose weight, you need to lose 30 pounds, and this is a recommended diet. When you hear diet, some people hear die. Like they're going to die because they have to do this. But with your budget, it doesn't have to be that way, because one thing I found, or I've witnessed with people who are very restrictive with their eating and then sometimes with their spending, is it works for a while. They will lose some pounds, they'll get some results, and then maybe a holiday comes around, whether it's Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthday, or they just get burned out and they end up gaining that weight back, because and more in some cases, because they were so restrictive that they didn't give themselves flexibility. And people do the same thing with their budgets. So also, some people may have negative connotations of budgeting because of their upbringing. One parent or whoever the caregiver of that of you was when you were younger may have had a bad experience themselves with money. And some people grew up hearing things like money is the root of all evil, so they have like some mindset things they have to get over, some mental blocks and some challenges that may impact them, and that makes them, weary or leery of budgeting. Sometimes people avoid budgeting because, and I have had clients actually say, I don't manage the household finances. My husband does it. And for women, it's crucial that you are aware that you are involved in the finances of your family, because if anything happens to your spouse, for instance, if he is, injured, if he becomes ill, or, worst case scenario, if he passes away, or if you all divorce, then you want to make sure that you know how to budget, especially if there are children involved. One thing I can say is my mother, my parents were married, and they divorced when I was very young. And I remember my mom, had a pretty tight budget, and she made sure that we, didn't feel deprived. I never felt deprived of like food, or we always had, shelter, things like that. But as far as like including like lots of things in our budget, like I know, um, I wanted to do some, extracurricular things in school. Yeah, I did a few, but if anything cost like tons of money, I knew, mom didn't have it, so I just, didn't do those things. Like, I was talking with some friends recently, and they were just talking about, there's like a cheering, like coaching company in my town, and like some parents, they travel like from other states so their children can go to this particular, and, cheer with this particular company. And I just thought of just like the investment of, well, time, energy, effort, and money, because, some things, can be expensive, you know, whether it's cheering, whether it's sports, things of that nature. So, some people may, be great at budgeting so that, their family can do, some other things like the sports and the cheering, and, other types of things. So with budgeting, some people may decide, like, I'm going to budget weekly, monthly, or, use a cash flow method. And I will say, the best method is actually the one that works for you and that you actually use. So I'm not going to, say like, hey, you have to do like cash envelopes, zero based budgeting. You have to budget every week, because, everyone's situation is different. Those who work, a job, or, are in a career, they may be paid on a weekly basis, bi-weekly, monthly basis, or for someone who is self-employed, they may work on commissions. There may be, bonuses involved if they reach certain sales targets. So everyone's a bit different. For me, what I do is I budget on a monthly basis, and I essentially, make sure I write down my income, my expenses, and, they're pretty much the same most months. So you can, easily, if you get, I will say, if you can, pull your bank statements, pull your credit card statements, and, look and see where your money is going. Look and see, like, if you have like your car insurance. I know some people pay like car insurance, life insurance premiums on an annual basis. Some pay it on a monthly basis. And if you have a home, and you have property taxes, if your home is paid off, that's coming directly. It's not coming out of a mortgage like it was when you're paying a mortgage. But, these are all expenses that you want to make sure that you're planning for. And for me, I am a simple pen and paper type person. Some people like using spreadsheets and apps. If that's your thing, I definitely recommend it. If sometimes I will say it's easy just to put your information into onto a website. Also, I would say with your bank, some banks actually have where you can you I shouldn't say but where you can reconcile your essentially like reconcile what people would do at reconciling their checkbooks, and that can be done online. And one thing I love about one bank that I bank with, I haven't done it in a while, but with each line in my my checking account of what has you know come into my checking account, out of my checking account, I can mark it as you know income, and then for the expenses put it in different categories like food, utilities, things of that nature, and it gives like a nice graph where you can actually see exactly where your money is going, and you can see the pie chart. So if you have if you decide to use a method like an electronic method, then you can quickly see, oh well, I've been 30% of my income is going to entertainment. And I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing, but it gives you a clear picture of where your money is going, and it also helps you to know where you may need to make some adjustments. And there's some people, when they hear budgeting, they think, like I said, of restriction, and they just think, okay, well, this means I need to cut back, and they may not want to give up Netflix and some subscriptions, Audible or Amazon Prime, things of that nature. I'm not personally saying that when you budget, you should give up everything, but if you have things such as debt that you're looking to repay, you want to consider what items you may want to pause for a while. Not saying that you can't go back to it, but if you have the goal of debt repayment, saving for a home, putting away money for your children's college education, purchasing a new vehicle for yourself or for your spouse, your children, going on a vacation, or if there are graduations and other major celebrations, things of that coming up, you want to ensure that you are definitely looking at your budget, looking at where your money is currently going, and if you need to make those adjustments, then make those adjustments as well. So, as I said, I mentioned, excuse me, that I budget on a monthly basis. Now, one thing I can say is that some expenses are variable expenses. For instance, I know that, well, for my family, in the month of May, there's Mother's Day, there's my two of my sisters' birthdays, my father's birthday, and several other people that I know they have birthdays in May. My pastor's wife, just lots of celebrations. So you can definitely adjust your budget accordingly for those months. If you're like, well, this month I know I don't have any birthdays, there are no major holidays, I can add money to my savings this month, for instance. Or you may say, well, I know that I'm getting a bonus this month, and I'm going to allocate this percentage or dollar amount of my bonus to you fill in the blank. It can be paying off a car, vacation, you name it, whatever the choice is that you make. So it doesn't your budget. It's very what I've found is that it can be fluid. I have to be flexible as well. And if I notice that if there's an overage, like if I have more income than expenses, then I'm usually either allocating those extra funds to paying off debt, saving, or if there's something that I've been that I have in I'm gonna say my Amazon cart that's just been sitting there that I may decide to get it. So when you are budgeting, you have a clear picture of exactly where your money is going. And as I mentioned, if you need to make adjustments, or I'll say this as well, one thing people, when they think of budgeting, they're like, well, I don't have enough money for this, this, that, and the other things I want to do. Some things that you may want to consider as well, instead of cutting back everything, I've learned that it's important to make sure that you have a life, that you sometimes you may get burned out on cooking at home. So find ways also to make extra money. That can be a, what people call a side hustle. If someone wants to get a part-time, if you or someone in your household wants to get a part-time job for a certain length of time to help meet a financial goal, you can also ask for a raise with your employer, you seek a promotion, or even getting a new job altogether. So those are some simple ways that you can definitely increase your income. But also, I would mention speak with a tax advisor. One thing I was so thankful for years ago, our pastor at my church, he had he is connected with I think he's a financial planner, financial advisor. I can't recall which one, but he offered those of us who signed up the opportunity to meet with him for 30 minutes. And what I personally did is I Google what to bring to a meeting when you're meeting with a financial advisor or financial planner. So I pulled like work pay stubs and things concerning my home and other finances, other things that I had questions about. And one thing that he recommended was, or he asked about was, with your job, how are you, claiming like the federal and state withholding taxes? And I told him, I'm single, not married, no children, and he said, well, talk to a, a tax advisor to find out if you need to make adjustments to what you're claiming, or if there are exemptions that you can or need to claim. Because in some instances, by making adjustments to your withholding, you can bring home additional take home pay, and you will have a smaller tax return if you do qualify for a tax return. And that way, it's still your money, but instead of waiting until once a year to get that, then that money is spread out over the year in my paychecks. So I did that. I followed his advice. I did speak with someone who does taxes, and she gave me some wise counsel. I made adjustments, and then it did increase my take home pay. So I recommend definitely find ways to increase your take home pay. If you're someone who is perhaps in like sales, or something commission based, then you definitely want to speak with your leadership to find out ways that you can take advantage of perhaps some incentives, programs they may have, promotions I should say, that they have, so that you can maximize your earning potential as well. So let me know if this has been helpful to you, if these tips, I know I've shared a lot, but I invite you to follow me on social media. You can follow me on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook at Virtue Financial Solutions. And you can, when you follow me, you'll definitely see some great weekly money tips that I post that will help you in your financial journey. So, again, I want to thank you for tuning in to the Master Your Money podcast. And if today's episode helped you, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a new lesson on mastering your money. Also, you can like and share this episode or all the episodes. And then also, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Leave a review. Let me know what you think. If you have questions, that's something that I can cover in a future podcast. And be sure to share this podcast as well with a friend who's ready to build financial freedom just like you are. And if you're ready to take the next step, visit me at virtuefinancialsolutions.org to learn more about my coaching programs, upcoming workshops, and resources to help you in your financial journey. Until next time, remember, you don't just manage your money, you master it. This is Marini signing off.